Swara, the live is fine, right? YouTube live.
Yeah, I checked. It's fine. Good evening, ma'am. Our principal ma'am has joined. Good evening.
Good evening. Our speaker madam has joined.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Dr. Suchandana. Good evening, Dr. Suchandana Bhattacharya. Welcome to the digital platform.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, good evening. So
Ma'am,
when
should
you
we
are going,
start?
Oindrila is there? Oindrila,
Yes,
Deepayan.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Okay. So we can. Good evening. So we can start. Or it's already 6. So we can
Yes, ma'am.
start our program. No problem.
Okay, ma'am. So, Oindrila, have started recording, so you can begin.
Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to have the third session of the 4-day online lecture series organizing by the Department of English of THK Jain College. I, Oindrila Sengupta, in charge of the Department of THK Jain College, in charge of the Department of English of THK Jain College, welcome the Honorable Speaker and all the participants and our respected Principal Ma'am, Professor Dr. Mausumi Singh Sengupta, in this event. It's a privilege to have with us Professor Dr. Suchandana Bhattacharya as the speaker of today's session. Dr. Bhattacharya is an assistant professor and head in the postgraduate department of St. Xavier's College, Autonomous, Kolkata. Her research interests include African American literary studies and women's writings on race and gender. She is a member of Jadavpur University American Circle. Dr. Bhattacharya is regularly engaged in presentations at national and international conferences, both in the country and abroad. Today, the topic of a lecture is Myth and the Mirror, Rereading Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. After the main lecture, with the permission of the Honorable Speaker, we will have an interactive session which will be conducted by Professor Swara Thacker and Professor Deepayan Datta. The interactive session will be initiated with the queries and questions posted by the participants. So I request all the participants to write down their questions in the Google Meet chat box and YouTube live chat accordingly. Participants are also requested to switch off their audio and video, and please don't click the present button to share your screen. Now, I would like to hand over this session to the Honorable Speaker, Professor Dr. Suchandana Bhattacharya. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to everyone. I would like to thank Dr. Mausumi Singh Sengupta, Principal of THK Jain College, and the members of the organizing committee for having taken this initiative to organize this webinar, even in such an inconducive atmosphere with the pandemic still raging. I thank the professors of the English department of this college for making the best use of such a platform, which would, I'm sure, prove extremely beneficial for the students. when Swara, who was my student in Xavier's College, first informed me about this online lecture series that the college is organizing, I was extremely interested and intrigued and wanted to participate, be a part of this initiative. I thought of discussing today Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman, and I have titled my paper Myth and the Mirror. I would like to explore the life and death of the principal tragic protagonist character, Willy Loman, in the course of my paper. Now, in an attempt to reread Miller's psychological play, Death of a Salesman, one has to negotiate with the idea of the myth as an alternate representation of notions to the mirror which reflects the tragic reality of human life. The context of the play is primarily related to the concepts of the American dream, the mythical and magical El Dorado, or the melting pot of opportunities, beckoning the aspiring mind to migrate from rags to riches. This was the lure of New America, the new world of limitless opportunities, the land of heart's desire. However, what remained latent, what was carefully put aside, was the careful elimination or suspension of human emotions, which were relentlessly sacrificed upon the altar of human ambitions. In Arthur Miller's play, the title, Death of a Salesman, is in itself a revelation of the failure of this dream. Or in other words, we could say, it represents the consequences of the failure. Death being the culmination of life, the play most seamlessly draws attention to the life of the protagonist, Willy Loman, and the entire play evolves as an inquiry into this life, which gradually pushes him towards death. Metaphorically, Willy's failure as a traveling salesman transforms his life into an after-death experience. In the entire play, he remains suspended from reality, as if caught up in a kaleidoscopic mesh of memories. The play opens at a juncture of crisis with an elaborate stage direction depicting the salesman's house as a small, fragile-seeming home. I quote, "An air of the dream clings to the place, a dream rising out of reality," unquote. What we need to keep in mind is the interesting interplay of colors highlighted in the opening stage direction. The interplay of colors, blue and orange. The blue light of the sky and the surrounding angry glow of orange against the backdrop of a melody from a flute create an ambience of wasted opportunities and fractured dreams. The blue light reflects the solace which Willy is desperately seeking through professional and material success, a success that continues to elude him, whereas the color orange reflects the restless unease that torments him within a maze of abject disquiet. In the first phase of the play's action, what we witness is the semblance of a close-knit family. The setting is the kitchen of the Loman household, the locus of all domestic activity, revolving around the central character Willy, his wife Linda, and the two boys, Biff and Happy. But when we start delving deeper, we notice the fissures. Willy is perpetually in a mode of denial, while Linda, on the other hand, is resigned to the present reality. When Linda says, "Well, dear," I quote, "well, dear, life is a casting off. It's always that way." Willie vehemently responds by saying, "No, no, some people, some people accomplish something," unquote. So right from the start, we notice a sense of strain, a nervous anxiety, which is clearly palpable in Willie, while Linda appears to be outwardly stable. A deep-rooted sense of claustrophobic unrest grips Willie perpetually all the time. It adds to his stress and clearly shatters any and every attempt made by Linda to maintain a show of equilibrium within the family. The opening conversation between Willie and Linda takes us through a maze of lost and found and lost routine, in which the characters seem to be irretrievably trapped. The quest motive that operates in the play, that is search for individual identity and selfhood within the complex maze of competitive multitudes, engulf Willie Loman gradually. This is precisely the reason why he recoils, he fears to observe his own reflection, his very own image in his son Biff. Linda assures Willie, I quote, "He'll find his way." But Willie knows better. He knows that Biff could also be forever lost, exactly like him. Extracting certain lines from the text would help create the complete picture of isolation and loss that both Willie and Biff were trapped within. The uncertainty, the trauma, the anxiety of modernist existence is repeatedly expressed through the lines, even which Biff quotes, "I tell you, Hap, I don't know what the future is. I don't know what I'm supposed to want," unquote. Willie's fatigue, all his fears, all his uncertainties are extremely reflected in Biff's character. Time and again, Willie is caught in scenes from the past, savoring a near perfect life with his little boys and vowing never to leave home anymore. However, such scenes were far removed from reality, as the fate of a traveling salesman is inextricably woven into a series of endless road trips, incessantly moving from one possibility to another without no certainty and with no certainty of success. As he persistently clings to these flashbacks, these memories, Willie recalls the silver lining to all his road trips. Exhausting as they were, he still promises his sons, I quote, "I'll show you all the towns America is full of. Beautiful towns and fine, upstanding people. And they know me, boys. They know me up and down New England." So this idea of recognition, he was desperate to be recognized. The entire play gyrates about this inception and eventual collapse of the American dream, in which Willie Loman is just a hapless representative of uncountable multitudes. It is almost, very interestingly, like the pre- and post-lapsarian of the biblical fall, in which the nascent stage of innocence, that is the harboring of the dream, can be equated to the prelapsarian stage, which is the dream which is forced to mature and ultimately perish by sinking into the post-lapsarian stage of dilemma and loss. The quiet dignity and strength of personality that Linda exudes complements the restless unease that torments Willie. The supporting characters in the play, namely the spirit of Ben, characters of Bernard, Charlie, Howard, who was Willie's boss, and the appearance and reappearance of the figure of the woman, the character of the woman. They altogether leave him more confused and agitated about his present. The appearance of this woman clearly takes us to Willy's suppression of his guilt and promising Linda, I quote, "I'll make it all up to you, Linda. And he trails off at that. This trailing off serves to show the burden that Willy was clearly under and that was wrecking Willy apart. It was clearly visible to Linda, who cries out to her sons time and again, "He's not the finest character." I quote, "He's not the finest character that ever lived, but he's a human being, and a terrible thing is happening to him. So attention must be paid. Attention must finally be paid to such a person." Yet again, Linda says, "I tell you, I know every thought in his mind. He put his whole life into you, and you've turned your backs on him." Willy is forever fleeting between the conscious and the subconscious. At one point, he advises Biff with the words, "It's not what you say, it's how you say it, because personality always wins the day." But shortly afterwards, he tells Linda, and I quote, "The average young man today is got the caliber of 0, unquote, expressing his disbelief in Biff. Yet again, as Biff's father, he exudes pride when he confirms about Biff, I quote, "A star like that, magnificent, can never really fade away." These rapid transitions, these rapid flux of thoughts and expressions are a lucid indication of the fragile state of mind and a confusion of emotions that Willy was overtly experiencing throughout the play. And in the second act, the degeneration grows more intense. Once again, the semblance of a family life is meant to delude the readers into believing that all is well. However, the surface reality soon gives way to the ultimate catastrophe. Willy recounts the death of his father, who, he says, died the death of a salesman. In those days, Willy recounts, there was personality in it. I quote, "There was respect, comradeship, and gratitude in it. Today, it's all cut and dried, and there's no chance for bringing friendship to bear or personality. You see what I mean? They don't know me anymore," unquote. As his desperation heightens, Linda tries to calm him down, to pacify him with the words, I quote, "Why must everybody conquer the world? You're well liked, and the boys love you." But Willy is inconsolable. Willy's appeal for recognition gets misinterpreted as false pride by Howard. And as already cited, each of the supporting characters of the play represent a particular mindset of the cross-section of the consumerist society that are all out to get Willy. Willy fails to convince this cross-section as he was progressively being identified as a hapless misfit. His skills as a salesman, his role as a father and a husband, all conglomerate to define this failure of a person that society makes of him. Willy fails on all fronts, the familial, the societal, the professional, in every which way that he thought he used to matter. He is put down by Charlie's words, and I quote, "The only thing you got in this world is what you can sell," says Charlie. "And the funny thing is that you are a salesman and you don't know that," unquote. To this, Willy listlessly responds, I quote, "I've always tried to think otherwise. I guess I always felt that if a man was impressive," and once again, he cannot finish what he had begun. He trails off again as the web of illusion starts to collapse, undermining all his idealist thoughts about salesmanship. This collapse aggravates. and begins to prey upon his mind, gnaws at his inner consciousness now with utmost intensity, driving Willie to the brink of his ultimate neurotic attack. So much so that it renders him also incapable of any further communication with his sons. Even Happy's rational presence now fails to bridge the gap between Biff and Willie. With Biff finally arriving to the realization where he says, I quote, "I realized what a ridiculous lie my whole life has been." These words are a sheer reflection of Willie Loman's life. When Willie finally breaks down and asks, how do we get back to all the great times? They used to be so full of light and comradeship, and always some kind of good news. Something nice was coming up ahead. This query remains rhetorical in nature, as Willie now realizes that his failure to have adapted to the advanced consumerist society is now beyond retrieval. The final showdown between Biff and Willie acts as the catalyst, hastening us to the end. Linda's concluding speech in the requiem to the play sums up the tragic situation from her point of view. According to her, Willie did die the death of a salesman. As she finally sobs and cries, "We are free, we are free," it is as if she is absolving Willie of all the guilt that he had burdened himself with. Linda's ever-committed support and companionship of Willie is once again an expression of her grit and determination to keep it together. Miller was inspired by the life of his salesman uncle and his house in Brooklyn where he had grown up, as he explores the trials and tribulations in the life of a salesman who is unable to cope with the transience of time and the crisis of identity that is an inevitable part of this transience. It is this inability to cope that renders Willie delusional, and his ultimate act of suicide through the automobile crash finally sets him free from this gyre of pain and disillusionment. The play successfully encapsulates the trauma of modernist survival, which is forced to go through the rigors of paramount expectations. The surrealist projection of Willie's mind and the psychoanalytical consideration of his dreams and desires, which remain thwarted, together create the image of the fragmented modernist self. The idea of chaos, which is explored in the text, consummates with Willie's death, and the nadir which follows comes through Linda's closing words, we are free," which resonates even after the finale. Interestingly enough, the high-rise apartments, which had featured in the opening stage direction, which tower in the surrounding neighborhood, symbolically reappear at the end of the text. It serves to reinstate the onslaught of a continuing progressive social advancement. Deeply rooted within the tenets of existentialism, which permeates the fabric of this play, Miller effectively captures the life and death of a salesman who abjectly surrenders and sacrifices himself upon the altar of insatiable consumerism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful talk. Your valuable insights will definitely help us to read and reread the text with multifaceted dimensions. Now, ma'am, if you permit, then we shall start our interactive session.
Yes, I'm definitely
Okay.
looking forward to the interactive session.
Okay, ma'am. Now I request Professor Swara Thacker and Professor Deepayan to start the interactive session.
Yeah, sure. I would like to request the participants to kindly write down their queries in the Gmeet and YouTube chat box so that we can relay those queries to ma'am. Ma'am, before anybody else puts up a query, I would like to request you to just elaborate a bit on the concept of the American dream, because some of the students are being introduced to American literature for the first time, so
Okay.
this would help
Yes.
them.
It's a motif which very strongly features in almost each noteworthy American text, which clearly stems from this idea, the American dream, which is clearly that beckoning, yes, which beckons the aspiring mind to move towards this promised land of limitless opportunities. So it's like I used at the start of my paper, I used this phrase, a distinctive movement from rags to riches, a melting pot of limitless opportunities, the dream which inspires, the dream which intrigues, dream which propels and stimulates the ambitious and aspiring mind, yes, to search or to seek out, yes, unending opportunities that the promised land, yes, held for them. The new
Mhm.
America, quote unquote, new America for them.
Okay, ma'am. Thank
Swara,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, questions are
uh,
coming in, Swara. If you could
this
just
is
list them for me. Yes,
Ma'am,
yes,
Professor Dr.
Suchandana.
Chandrani Bishash is also
Chandranithi.
here.
Yes,
Suchandana, very
nice to
nice
see you.
paper. Very nice
Thank,
paper.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Just
you.
add an observation that you
Yes,
it is you will just elucidate on that. So the play is a modern day tragedy.
yes.
So, if you can just elucidate for the students' sake, the tragic element in a completely modern setup, because they are used to the concept of tragedy in the traditional
Classical,
society, the
yes,
classical
traditional,
sense.
yes,
So
yes.
that, yeah, yes,
Yeah. So very clearly, the date of the play, I mean, 1949, clearly the post Second World War era, yes, where the modernist mind is caught within a web of more and more opportunities, but at the same time, more and more confusions. Because
Hmm.
every opportunity opens doors to a plethora of confusions.
Right,
Yes, so it's
right,
a question of choice becomes problematized. Yes, it stands
exactly,
problematized.
exactly, yes,
So very clearly, therefore, the setting, the backdrop in which the play was composed and staged, right? So that becomes very crucial for our understanding, yes, of this fragmentation, this
hmm,
disjointedness in the
hmm,
mind of the modern man. And
right,
Willie is just a representative of the multitudes, hapless multitudes.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah, yeah.
And thank you, ma'am, for joining in. Thank you,
No,
ma'am.
I had always decided to come and to listen to Suchandana. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So now I'll forward the queries which the participants have asked. So the first one is, does Willie mean failure either as a husband or as a father or as a man in the context of existentialism?
See,
So,
what is it? You have to first totally identify with the main tenets of existential philosophy, yes, which focuses on the essence, the core, yes, of human existence, which is cited as the most valuable, yes, of all experiences and feelings, the core, right? So you cannot segregate Willie, yes, into these various identities that easily. No, he is a conglomeration of a salesman, a father, a husband, right? So the impulses which motivate Willie as a salesman, yes, he is also trying to extend that kind of a dream for his children to work on, to build on, right? So his qualities of salesmanship that Willie sadly fails to satisfy, yes, in the present day consumerist world, yes, is something that you cannot take Willie piecemeal, right? So it's a conglomeration of all identities fused in one. He fails, like I said, yes, he clearly fails because we hear this regret, yes, every time he talks to Linda. We can this regret is palpable, right? As a salesman, he has decidedly failed, right? And also as a father, yes, because he has failed to convince Biff, yes, to move ahead and make a progressive output of his life.
okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Now somebody is asking that can you please elucidate a bit on the concept of surrealism and
Surrealism.
existentialism?
I saw the question. Yes. So surrealism is basically a postmodernist and postmodernist movement in the area of art, right? Which of course, when migrates to literature, yes, clearly surrealism is once again dealing with the philosophy. The core tenet of the philosophy is clearly dealing with the inner recesses, yes, the inner recesses, the inner consciousness of the human mind and human self, right? So laying utmost importance upon that section, upon that layer of human consciousness, which remains so fragile and so susceptible to external onslaughts. Yes. So basically, once again, trying to explore from within. I mean, there's not so much of external action in the play, if you notice, yes, than the internal progression of thoughts. It's a montage, yes, clearly, of all his memories, the flashbacks, yes, moving back and forth, continuous movement back and forth, which altogether create, yes, a gyre, yes, labyrinth, yes, of experiences and emotions for Billy and the characters related to him. Yes.
All right, ma'am. The next question is that can you please explain the blending of realism and expressionism in Death of a Salesman?
Once again, Swara, could I have that? I got a little distracted with another interesting question. Swara, could I have the question again?
Yes, ma'am. Can you please explain the blending of realism and expressionism in Death of a Salesman?
Realism and expressionism, see, like going against, yes, the tenets of the realistic doctrine. Yes, you have Willie clearly the character of Willie. In character of Willie, Miller is clearly delving into the inner recesses of his mind. Yes, and trying to express, yes, what the character must have been through, what must he have suffered, right? What he must have suffered to have to finally have been driven to such a drastic, yes, end to his life. So, like I said, the title is Death of a Salesman. But what is important is not just the death. What is important is the life that precedes death, right? The life which precedes death. So, if you take the title Death of a Salesman, what you would basically require, yes, to do is to look at that life which precedes death, and that life which is so fraught, yes, with a mix of emotions and expressionism, but certainly not a life, yes, that Willie could have taken forward in any positive direction. Yes.
Okay.
I just read a question, Swara, which asked me, why is Willie attached more to Biff even though he has two sons, Biff and Happy? Yes. Now, this is also something I tried to, just touch and go in my paper, that for Willie, Biff reflects his own life, right? So Biff is a mirror reflection, unlike Happy, who is often a counter reflection, yes, that rationale stance of Happy all the time, yes, and the emotionally strung, yes, or overwrought, overstrung stance of Willie and Biff can be identified or related to one another. Yes, so Happy's character complements, rather in a way, yes, the presence of Biff and Willie, of course, yes, the larger stance of Willie in the play.
Okay,
Yes.
ma'am. Somebody has asked that can you please throw light on the existential angst of Willie? So I think
Existential
you've
angst, actually,
already.
since 40s and 50s. I mean, a movement. I say a movement. Please allow me to say so, because existentialist philosophy was more of a socio-cultural movement, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot dissociate the philosophy, this thought, from the society. Yes, that the modern mind was negotiating with in the post-World War II era, right? So the anxiety of survival, yes, in the wake of the Second World War, the aftermath, yes, of the Second World War, yes, the utter, like I said, multitudes of opportunities, yes, which were open, yes, to the human mind for free. But at the same time, it also brought in a plethora of chaos. So clearly, therefore, we realize that the existential angst, yes, the desire to survive despite all odds, yes, but one having to bow down, yes, surrender, like Willie does, surrender, yes, to the onslaught of advancement.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Well,
Here,
I see another interesting question, Swara. Can we say that
yeah.
Willie died the death of a salesman? Yes.
Yes.
Can we say that Willie died the death of a salesman? Now, this is something that perhaps, yes, Miller has placed for each one of you to consider, right? Now, Linda, yes, who is in all-out support of Willie right from the start till the end. Yes, and I mentioned this in my paper, if you've noticed, that in the end, when she says we are free in the Requiem, yes, from Linda's point of view, Willie did die the death of a salesman. Yes, Willie did die the death of a salesman, right? But of course, when you explore the life of the salesman and not the death, right? The life of the salesman, yes, which becomes all the more important in your understanding of a character of Willie Loman, you will realize that yes, he died desperately seeking recognition, yes, and perhaps, yes, he died the death of a salesman.
Okay, ma'am. So here another question is related to the concept of the American dream, that when we consider about the American middle class dream, is
Yes.
there a connection between the title to the death of a middle
And death
class
of a middle
dream?
class. Could the title be that? Is that it? Death of middle class
Yes,
dream.
ma'am. Is there a
Yes, of
connection
course.
between the
Yes, of
title?
course. Yes, of course. You see, what was most important for Willie was the appearance, the personality, the well-groomed salesman, yes, who could convince, yes, and sell his product, yes, and therefore achieve materialistic success in life, right? So, however, he had always thought that that would suffice, yes, but the concept of the American dream, yes, which clearly entails, and for Willie, it had also been each of the road trips had been so very exhausting that fatigue is mirrored in his son Beef. It is not just psychological fatigue, yes, the physical exhaustion that Willie himself has experienced, yes. So, therefore, yes, you can say it is the death of the middle class dream, yes, as projected so keenly also through Beef, yes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Now I would pass it on to Professor Deepayan Datto to conduct the interactive session from YouTube. Questions that have been asked there.
Okay.
Thank you, Swara.
Yeah.
I'll take some questions from YouTube. The first one is asked by Sampurna Chaudhary. She has a doubt from the part of the stage directions in Act 1, and she asks, ma'am, the stepping through the wall on the fourth stage refers to the fourth wall.
Yeah, of course, because you see, there are certain layers. Yes, it's the character is layered. Yes, so therefore, the wall, every prop. Yes, also like I said, the interplay of light. Yes, the wall. Yes, it's like layers. You're moving from one to the next, and then to the one beyond. Right? Finally, like I said, you are basically you're dissecting the life of Willie Loman. So the death remains at the end of the life. Yes, so as you move, yes, from one to the next and then beyond, clearly we realize that we are going through that concept of the fourth wall. Yes, and finally moving or arriving to a conclusion, where we have Willie succumbing, yes, to the external pressures. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is asked by Amit Sarkar. Ma'am, do you think for the climax of Willie's illusion based on life and traumatic aspects, the reality of the society is liable? And how far is it concerned with the present society and situation?
Definitely the reality of the society is liable. Yes, it is the society which is liable. Yes, and of course the present society. I mean, you just have to also look around you to realize, yes, that a play written in 1949 is so very relevant to the present, not even day, in the present moment, right? So clearly you are everything around you, yes, is filtered, yes, through the social constructs that force us to think in a particular way, right? So the social cultural constructs are, I would say, totally liable, yes, to the delusional character of Willie Loman that we come across in the play. Yes.
Now, the
Next.
last question is by Siva Rupini. She asks that what do you think about American Dream and its effects in today's era? Now, does the
American Dream and its effect in its today's era, like I said, yes, highly relevant. Yes, highly relevant. Yes, this migration, the tendency, yes, the drift that we call, yes, the brain drain. Yes, not just that. I mean, relocating in search of greener pastures. Yes, we often use this phrase greener pastures, right? So this relocation, this migration, this movement, yes, is a ever continuing fluid phenomenon, right? And we cannot just say that, or we cannot just shut a blind eye, turn a blind eye towards this ever consistent fluid phenomenon of drift and movement, right? So the lure of the American dream, the lure of the American dream, yes, is, I would say, to a large extent, yes, also relevant in the present times.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, ma'am. These are the three questions that I had.
Okay.
So I pass this to Oindrila, Professor Oindrila Sengupta.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I had great delight in answering the questions. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your nuanced explanations. I really hope that all the participants are satisfied and benefited with the responses. Now I request Professor Swara Thacker to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Oindrila. So, respected guests and dear participants, on behalf of the organizing committee, I, Professor Swara Thacker, faculty member of the Department of English at THK Jain College, express my sincere gratitude to our speaker for today's session, Professor Dr. Suchandana Bhattacharya, who is also my teacher. So thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and sharing your insights on Miller's Death of a Salesman. So I still remember your lectures on American literature, and I'm glad to say that I've passed on that knowledge to my students as well. So today's session will surely help the audience to explore Miller's texts in an informed manner. I would also like to thank the college authorities and our principal, Madam Dr. Mausumi Singh Sengupta, for their constant support. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for being a part of today's session. We have one more session lined up for them on 21st August 2020, 5 p.m. onwards. And I would just like to inform them that the feedback link will be shared on the last day, that is on 21st August. So kindly, all the participants, please be present on that day. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for coming over here and sharing your really insightful lectures with our students. I'm sure that all the students, not only from our college students, but from different institutions, many students, they have also joined and they are definitely benefited out of this lecture. And what I like is the interactive session, really, because students are very much attentive in that case, and students, you have handled it very with knowledge and your experience. So I'm really thankful to you, madam. Okay,
I'm extremely thankful, ma'am. I'm extremely thankful to have been a part of this initiative. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, madam. Okay, thank you, Swara, Oindrila, Deepayan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
This session is closed now. The session is closed now. Okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So, Deepayan, you can stop the streaming now.
Yeah, I stopped.